Richardson, civil rights attorney at McCune Law Group, getting into it once again, breaking it down, the law and common sense.
This was actually released to the media. These are images that were shown to the jury. They're in evidence. I feel like a lot of the times they're just to confirm that Combs was in specific locations as outlined by other evidence, including testimonial evidence. I mean, him on a treadmill or a bike sipping a mimosa, I don't think that goes to the heart of racketeering, but it's just important. It's kind of interesting to get these new photos. So, Joe, again, this is being read into evidence. You have this, the prosecutor, as Jane, saying to Combs, I'm not trying to bleep strangers. You want to have me bleep some bleep so you can jet off with Gina? And Agent Cecilio, by the way, this is Joseph, I might be mispronouncing his last name. Joseph Cecilio is the special agent for Homeland Security Investigations. He's reading the messages as Combs says, are you going to let me in our house? And Jane says, I just put my child to bed. So we have this question about what the defense is going to be, okay? And Joe, I'm going to read it for you. This is from Big Z YD 3000. Can we please talk more about why the defense is not presenting any witnesses? So, Joe, we don't know that for sure, but it seems, based on some of the testimony that came out today, or what was the conversation before the jury came in, the defense might just introduce some exhibits and call it a day?
I guess theoretically they could. In any event, the point is made that their presentation will be very short. Whether it's a witness or two, we'll see. But it can't be a whole lot if we're actually contemplating the beginning of closing arguments on Thursday. Working backward, that means there's just not a whole lot of presentation that they're going to be making. So whether it's a witness or two plus some evidence, whether it's just evidence being admitted, they obviously believe that they have the ability to undermine the lion's share of what's going on. Now, to the point that's been made a little bit earlier, it's a little confusing to me just because it looks pretty good from the prosecution standpoint that they would get transportation to engage in prostitution. So does that mean they're just giving up on that and they just decide they'll batten down the hatches on the rest of everything else? We'll see. But in any event, there's a very, very short presentation that's being contemplated. So that means that they have to be confident about what they're doing, what battles they're going to fight, and what battles that they aren't, for better, for worse.
Okay, Joe, I want to go to you. We get a lot of questions about Christina Coram, who's come up, I don't know, not only every single day, but I think every single witness has mentioned Christina Coram, Sean Combs, a purported former chief of staff. She's not testifying by all accounts. Well, Erica Charlotte says, what is KK being named as a co-conspirator actually mean, and what is entailed? Thank you.
Interesting question. And I'd answer it by saying it means everything and it means nothing. You certainly have somebody being alleged to be a co-conspirator, but two things. First of all, she's not being prosecuted as a co-conspirator. And second of all, it doesn't look like she's even getting on the stand. So without her getting on the stand, you've got a bunch of secondary things being said about her. She seems to be very, very central. So it makes you wonder why somebody's not putting her on the stand. And what do you take from her not being put on the stand? The possibility that either through direct or through most likely cross, you don't get confirmation of the agreement from KK as a co-conspirator so that you know that there's a conspiracy. It would seem like to me that the defense would certainly be looking to grill her that way to demonstrate some things. Also, you read articles about people that know her, et cetera, that kind of thing. They will say that she wasn't in it having anyone do anything that they didn't want to do, that they weren't voluntary, et cetera. My sense is that things were voluntary, things were consensual. My sense is that the prosecution is not going to get what they would need from her in order to say, okay, now we're going to put her on. So she means everything because she's so central in everything said about her. But it means nothing in that she's not a defendant at all. So the prosecution doesn't have to have her on the stand in order to prove their case. But what does the jury think about the fact that somebody that is so central is not being brought in by either side?
Joe, I think one of the clearest cut examples for the prosecution for sex trafficking is the allegation, if the jury accepts it, that he's on the plane with Cassie. He allegedly shows her videotapes, these sexually explicit videotapes of her, threatens to release them. So now you have a threat element, you have a travel component. They land, he demands a freak off, he gets a freak off. To me, if you're talking about the videos and how they play into sex trafficking, that feels like something the government should double down on, no?
Yeah, I think so. I think that makes a lot of sense. I also thought that if you'll remember, when there's this whole exchange where Cassie's parents get him $10,000, $10 or $20,000 to keep videos from being released, right? And so there are some elements of force that would seem to be there that would recommend that someone is doing something that they wouldn't be doing otherwise unless they felt like they absolutely had to. So yeah, if they double down on that and really make that central, there's so much that's been thrown around in this case. If they really double down on that and make that central, maybe that helps to bring the force fraud, or coercion to bear.
Joe, we got an interesting poll that came in. Why do you think Diddy isn't taking the stand? So 28% of those polled say he's avoiding incriminating himself. 21% say he's following legal advice. 3% say control of the narrative, and 46% say all of the above. But what does Joe Richardson think?
Well, you're making me feel awfully important. I don't know that I deserve that. But I'd say, first of all, constitutionally, he doesn't have to. He doesn't, it's the job of excellent prosecutors to take apart someone that's testifying after they do direct. So he's not going to end up testifying. He sold a lot of records, accomplished a lot of things. He is not going to look better for running up against these prosecutors. And he knows that. Now, connected to that point, and this is something I've been saying from the very beginning, P. Diddy escaped some charges about 20, 25 years ago that I don't know that he should have escaped. New York loves him. Okay, the people love him. Now, he might have teed off somebody at the top, which is why he can't get bail, which surprised all of us. But there are people that love him and that don't want to believe that this is true. And perhaps the jury, having known him before, has certainly seen him in a different light than they're seeing him now. The danger that you run, aside from being cross-examination, being crossed and eviscerated to no end, is that perhaps the jury sees you the way you are as opposed to the way you were. This is somebody that has the key to the city of New York, okay? And so I think that he wants to give himself the opportunity to get the benefit of the doubt if the defense can make that presentation, poke those holes, as said before, without him getting on the stand and mucking it up. So simply put, I think that if he wants the benefit of the doubt and wants someone to connect to who he was, give him the presumption of evidence of innocence, etc., I think you stay off the stand.
Joe, this is a great question from Janity Khanum. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. Do you think there is any possibility that it could be a hung jury?
Sure, that's always a possibility. The general wisdom is most of us think that they've done a great job of showing transportation to engage in prostitution. A lot of us think that the racketeering charge may be the hardest to show, and it may be sex trafficking, even though they're making progress on it, may be somewhere in between, whether you think they've done it or not. The X factor that I always talk about is the whole idea that you gotta believe that the jury will do the work to decipher between, separate the wheat from the chaff, and make sure that they have the judgment to take these charges individually, right? But in a worst case scenario for the prosecution, if they really don't want to believe that Diddy's a criminal, that there's no criminal enterprise, is there some way that somehow it could creep into what is supposed to be the easiest cause of action to show, and then some things hang? They could certainly hang at the top. I think those are the harder ones to prove. But could it hang at the bottom? I don't know that that's necessarily likely, but things happen with celebrities. Things happen with celebrities with resources that have been able to put on a pretty good defense case. And so anything is possible, but we'll just have to see.
Joe, we got more questions coming in. This one's from Miss G Dub. Do you anticipate jury nullification? So first explain what jury nullification is, and do you anticipate that could be a serious concern going into deliberation? How much do you concern that the jurors would base their decision not based on the facts or the evidence presented in court, but more so? I mean, look, there's a concern. This has come up, that as soon as the jury sees the 2016 tape of Cassandra Ventura being beaten by Sean Combs, they're going to say, we want to get him for something. We want to get him for something. I don't care if it meets the elements of racketeering. I don't care if it meets the elements of sex trafficking. Or Like you said before, we were talking about before. He's like the
Right.
king of New York. People love him.
Right.
You know, that
Right.
was the concern. That's why jury selection is so important. How much is the jury going to make the decision on emotion or anger or a
Yeah.
sense of loyalty or a fan service, as opposed to the facts and the law and the evidence?
Yeah, good redirect. Thanks for that. Yeah, you gotta listen. It takes a village. It's important for the jury to actually do their jobs. They can't make a decision despite the evidence, right? They can't look at the evidence and because of some reason or some other, they actually end up ignoring it and not doing what it is that they're supposed to actually do. They're supposed to weigh the evidence, they're supposed to consider the evidence, and they're not supposed to find someone, make a finding that's contrary to the evidence because of some reason outside of the evidence. And so I'd like to think that that wouldn't happen. You need a thoughtful jury, though, because this is a long trial. So they need to consider everything that's going on and not be taken away. You know, maybe the nullification piece is a little bit more, you have a little bit more fear for that when you're dealing with a star, when you're dealing with someone that's a public figure, right? Someone that's been, that people feel a certain way about, someone with the key to the city. So hopefully they do what it is that they're supposed to do and actually consider the evidence so that when they come out, there's no undermining of what they end up coming up with.